Why do some cars serve their owners faithfully for years, while others seem to break down constantly, sometimes just a couple of seasons after purchase, even though they rolled off the same assembly line? Cars don't choose their fate, their owners do. Some people easily drive 150,000 miles or more without major issues, while others are regulars at the repair shop. So, what makes the difference? The answer lies in the small, everyday habits of the driver, things most people don't even think about. But these little choices, repeated day after day, either extend your car's lifespan or quietly shorten it. And often, the damage goes completely unnoticed until it's too late. In this video, I've compiled a list of the most common but rarely talked about mistakes drivers make when it comes to vehicle care. This isn't a list of obvious tips. It's a collection of insights I've seen over and over again throughout my years working in automotive service. Some of them you might already know, others may surprise you, but all of them can help you avoid expensive problems down the road. No fluff, just practical advice. Let's get into it. What's the danger of wheel spin? Let's start with some winter driving habits. When the streets are buried in snow, one of the most common and overlooked mistakes drivers make is wheel spin. And I'm not talking about when you're completely stuck in deep snow, desperately revving the engine and overheating your transmission. That's obvious. What causes more frequent and hidden damage happens during everyday situation, pulling away from a traffic light or driving out of your driveway. The light turns green. You press the gas, but there's black ice under your tires. The wheels spin for a second, the traction control light flashes, and then you take off. Seems harmless, right? It might be, but only if your RPMs stayed low. In that case, the wheels slip briefly, then regain traction, and the car's electronics handle the situation just fine. You might even hear a clicking or buzzing sound. That's the transmission protection system kicking in. No big deal. But the story changes if you stomped on the gas, which, let's face it, we all do when we're running late. The wheels spin up fast with no grip, and the engine revs climb. Then suddenly the tires catch dry pavement, and all that rotational energy has to go somewhere. What happens next is a sharp mechanical shock. The wheels are still spinning fast, but now there's traction, and that force is sent straight into your drivetrain. The torque converter, planetary gears, transmission components, they all take that hit. The result? Premature wear, micro damage, and eventually, expensive repairs. And this doesn't happen off-roading or rallying. Just from everyday winter driving with a heavy foot. The fix is simple. If your wheels are slipping when you accelerate, ease off the gas a little. You won't get any real acceleration on ice anyway, but you will save your transmission and drivetrain from unnecessary abuse. Do you need to warm up your car? Here's one of the oldest debates in winter driving. Do you really need to warm up your engine? Kind of like the snow tires versus all seasons discussion, everyone seems to have an opinion. Those who support warming up often mention thermal expansion, that engine components need to heat up and settle in before driving. But this thinking comes from the era of carburetors and old-school engines, where a cold start really did mean rough operation, or no operation at all. Modern engines are a whole different story. Manufacturing tolerances are tighter, materials are more advanced, and oils have come a long way. Electronic fuel injection replaced carburetors long ago, and cold engines no longer stall just because it's freezing outside. So, for today's cars, warm-ups aren't really necessary, as long as the weather isn't brutally cold. This is backed by major automakers. For example, Volkswagen used to teach in their service training programs that in normal conditions, you can simply start the engine and drive off. These are European recommendations designed for mild winters. Generally, they apply down to around 5 degrees Fahrenheit, and in most cases, cars sold in North America are tested to reliably start down to -4 degrees Fahrenheit to -10 degrees Fahrenheit without a warm-up. But now let's talk about motor oil, which is the real key here. Most drivers use multi-grade oils like 5W30 or 5W40, which are designed to work year-round. However, in very cold temperatures, they perform worse than so-called winter oils like 0W30. Here's a quick breakdown. The W in oil grade stands for winter. It means the oil is rated for cold weather. The number before the W, like 5 or 0, refers to the oil's viscosity in cold conditions. For example, 5W oil is rated to flow down to -22 degrees Fahrenheit, while 0W oil works down to -31 degrees Fahrenheit. Sounds good in theory, but in real-world cold, even rated oils become thicker, and a cold, thick oil can be hard for the oil pump to circulate quickly. This means reduced oil pressure, delayed lubrication, and more wear during the first seconds after startup. That's why the golden rule is this. Don't rev a cold engine. Start the car, let it idle for 15 to 30 seconds, then drive off gently. Stay in low RPMs during the first few minutes. Once the temperature gauge starts to move, you're good to drive normally. And here's a bonus. Warming up while driving is actually faster. The engine warms up quicker under light load than while just idling, so the time spent in cold operation is minimized. In truly cold conditions, say below -10 degrees Fahrenheit, it's a good idea to let the car idle for a minute or two before driving, not just for the oil, but also for things like like rubber seals and gaskets. Cold rubber is stiff and brittle, and warming it even slightly helps everything seat better. It's also worth noting, car manufacturers are doing everything they can to simplify life for drivers. Their marketing message is, just fill it with gas and go. They don't want to bother you with extra steps, like frequent oil changes, even though those steps really do help extend the life of your car, especially in city traffic and cold climates. That's why service intervals today are often listed as 6,000 to 9,000 miles. But engine hours are no longer tracked, even though they matter more in heavy traffic. And transmission oil? Lifetime fill. Same story. Skipping warm-ups may not break your car tomorrow, but over time, it adds up. And guess what? You'll be back at the dealership, only this time shopping for a new vehicle. And what about your transmission? When the car is just idling in park, the transmission fluid doesn't really warm up. You'd have to idle for over an hour to make a difference. But once you're moving, even at low speed, the fluid begins to circulate, and the transmission warms up properly. Driving gently is the best way to warm up your transmission. Same goes for your suspension. Rubber bushings, seals, and shock absorber fluid all stiffen up in the cold. That's why your car feels like a block of wood during the first few minutes. And again, sitting still doesn't help. These components only warm up and soften through movement. Unless it's extremely cold, you don't need to let your engine idle for minutes. Start it up, wait a few seconds, and drive gently. The first few miles should be easy on the throttle. That's the best way to protect your engine, your transmission, and your wallet. Next tip, always use your parking brake. First of all, using it regularly keeps it from seizing up. In many vehicles, especially those with rear disc brakes, the parking brake has its own set of brake shoes located inside the rear rotor. What you see from the outside is the brake disc, but inside that hub-like center section is a drum with a separate parking brake mechanism. That means it has its own shoes, springs, and guides. And if you don't use it, especially in areas with road salt and winter chemicals, that whole system can seize up pretty quickly. Second reason, parking on an incline. If you rely solely on the park position in an automatic transmission, all the weight of the car presses on a small locking mechanism inside the gearbox, parking pal, or a locking gear, and over time it wears out under stress. Personally, I've developed a simple habit. Stop the car, apply the parking brake, then shift into park, and only then release the brake pedal. In that order, and everything works perfectly. Now, let's talk about something that seems harmless. Washing your car. It might sound odd, but have you ever noticed your blower motor making strange noises? Or even failing shortly after a car wash? It's not the rain. Driving in a downpour is fine. Automakers designed for that. But power washing is different. When you aim a high-pressure stream of water at certain angles, it can force water into places it would never reach under normal conditions, including your HVAC intake. Some vehicles have ventilation layouts that make them especially vulnerable. If you hit the wrong spot with a pressure washer, water can enter the cabin air intake or blower assembly. One simple trick to help prevent this. Before washing, switch your climate control to recirculate mode. This closes the outside air flap and helps block water from entering the ventilation system. It's a tiny step, but it can save you hundreds of dollars in electrical or HVAC repairs down the road. The hidden danger of installing mesh grills over your radiator. Let's talk about a growing trend and a common mistake in recent years, adding aftermarket mesh screens to your radiator grill. At first glance, it seems like a smart move. Many drivers think, why not? It protects the radiator from bugs, leaves, and debris. But here's the catch. Why don't car manufacturers install them from the factory? You won't find a single production vehicle with ultra-fine mesh in front of the radiator, and there's a reason for that. The factory grill is designed to stop larger debris, rocks, branches, road chunks, not pollen, dust, or tiny particles. That's because engineers calculate precisely how much airflow the radiator needs to keep the engine cool. Airflow is critical. Even a small restriction changes the system's efficiency. When you install a mesh screen, especially one with very fine holes, you disrupt that balance. Not only does airflow drop, but dirt and debris start collecting on the mesh itself, often faster than they would on the radiator. Instead of helping, it creates a secondary clogging layer. Now add a poorly designed aftermarket bumper with random cutouts and no wind tunnel testing, and airflow gets even worse. We won't go deep into eBay aero kits, but you get the idea. Never block your radiator's airflow. Even a slight increase in coolant temperature, just a few degrees, causes combustion chamber temperatures to spike. That leads to faster oil breakdown, carbon buildup, incorrect thermal clearances, and ultimately, engine wear. Want to protect your radiator the right way? Skip the mesh. Just wash it occasionally with low-pressure water. That's cheaper, more effective, and exactly what engineers had in mind. The hidden risks of ECU tuning. Chip tuning. Let's talk to those considering ECU tuning, also known as chip tuning. There's a popular belief that factory engine software is a compromise and that a new tune will unlock the engine's full potential. And to some extent, that's true. Factory calibrations are designed to balance everything: power, fuel economy, engine longevity, emissions, and overall reliability. Manufacturers aim for the safest middle ground across all conditions, fuel qualities, and climates. But if you want to squeeze every last bit of performance out of your engine, just know there's a price to pay. Once you go beyond factory limits, you're responsible for keeping things in check. You'll need to regularly inspect your radiator, cooling system, and hoses. Your engine oil will oxidize faster under higher heat and stress, so oil changes will need to be more frequent. The load on internal components, cams, gears, pistons, increases, and your transmission might not be ready for the added torques at all. Everything in your vehicle is built around a specific power level. Raise combustion temperatures, and you raise the risk of piston damage or failure. And yes, it happens more often than people think. The catalytic converter also takes a hit. It's designed to process fuel and air, not oil vapor, which can appear when engines run hotter and start burning oil. That leads to faster degradation and eventual failure of the cat. Now, it's true that some tunes can fix bugs or flat spots in the power band, especially in budget models or poorly optimized factory calibrations. But those are rare exceptions. A lot of people say, I've been tuned for 2 years and everything's fine. But 2 years isn't a long-term test. Let's see how that engine looks after around 60,000 miles. In my experience, a stock engine will almost always be in better shape than one that's been running a tune. If you still decide to go through with it, do it only with a reputable, well-reviewed tuner, and go into it knowing you're changing a system that was carefully balanced by a team of engineers who spent years designing it, testing it, and backing it with a warranty. Once you alter that balance, you own the consequences. Watch your engine RPMs. This next tip is especially useful for those driving a manual transmission, and probably even more so for the younger generation of drivers. The main rule: don't drive at very low RPMs. In the name of emissions and fuel efficiency, modern cars often encourage drivers to shift early and keep engine speeds low, below 2,000 RPM. But in many cases, that's a serious mistake. Low RPM driving becomes not just inefficient, but damaging when you're towing, climbing hills, or overtaking on the highway. You may have noticed, to accelerate from low RPMs, you have to press the gas pedal much harder, and the car still responds sluggishly. Sometimes it even starts to shake slightly. That's detonation. And during those moments, your fuel consumption skyrockets. So much for efficiency. Now imagine doing that in 5th gear, at low speed. That's a recipe for disaster. Oil pressure at low RPMs is very low. If you push the engine under load in that condition, you risk oil starvation, which is extremely harmful to internal engine components. Internal combustion engines haven't fundamentally changed in over a century, and one golden rule still applies. The more you demand from your engine, the higher the RPMs need to be. Ever wondered why the red line on your tachometer usually starts around 6,000 RPM? That's not just for decoration. It's a clear indication from the manufacturer. Everything below that is fair game. The engine was designed to operate there. So don't be afraid of higher RPMs. If you need to accelerate quickly, revving to 5,000 to 6,000 RPM is totally fine, as long as it's brief. For everyday driving, shifting around 3,000 to 4,000 RPM is ideal. Operating in the moderate to high RPM range improves lubrication to key areas like the crankshaft bearings and ensures proper oil pressure under load. That's manual transmissions covered. But what about automatics? Same logic applies. If you're towing, driving uphill, or merging onto the highway, press the gas pedal harder. That tells the transmission to downshift, allowing the engine to reach a safer, more effective power band. In short, don't chase the lowest RPMs possible. Staying in the right range, not too low, not over the red line, is far better for your engine's health and long-term performance. Modern vehicles are sophisticated and reliable machines, but their lifespan depends not just on build quality or brand, but on how you treat them. Each of the tips we covered today isn't just theory. They're small, real-world habits that often go unnoticed, yet silently wear down your vehicle over time. Using the parking brake, avoiding aggressive warm-ups, paying attention to engine RPMs, staying away from sketchy modifications and tunes, all of it adds up to something bigger, a driving culture. And in the end, that culture determines how many years your car will run trouble-free and how much money you'll save on repairs. Take care of your car, and it'll take care of you.